She had a wonderful spirit that was oddly enough devoid of hatred, devoid of malice. There's a way that people were just attracted to her, some quality in her, just like a magnet to people who needed confirmation as to their identity, who needed affirmation, who just needed to be part of a community. She was always able to find, through humor, the good, the needed in a person. It didn't make a difference who it was. We'd always lived in the country, homes in the country in Jamaica. My mom was, in fact, a nurse, a registered nurse in New York City, and so we grew up in Manhattan on the Lower East Side, East 17th Street, called Bedpan Alley because it was a series of hospitals. My mom's diagnosis with Alzheimer's was kind of heart-wrenching. I'm sitting in my office and I get a phone call, and it's my father. He had said that he doesn't know what's going on, but something's not right with my mom. Her behavior had begun to change. She was forgetting things, but of course at that early stage, you can't tell them that they're forgetting things, but he was clearly exacerbated and confused and a little left in bewilderment as to what to do. The reality of what was to come in caregiving was completely unknown to me. I knew nothing of this. At that time, I didn't even realize that my own grandmother, my maternal grandmother, had died of the same thing, not calling it Alzheimer's back then. And so I had no clue as to what was going to be required of me. And I had no one really to talk to ask. And so I just bought books and read online studies of Alzheimer's, what to do, what was necessary, answering questions that I posed to myself. How does diet affect this? How does sleep affect this? How do I deal with someone who is aware that something is happening that's beyond their control? How do I deal with emotional responses from my mother, from my loved one? How do I deal with their fear? How do I deal with this, that, and the other? And I just practiced what I read and found that it was resonating and working well. The Vocalise has always had a connection for me vis-a-vis my mom. But my mom as a prism to really the rest of the world. For me, the Vocalise was first beautiful, but then through my caregiving experience, a kind of a musical tapestry, rich tapestry of what I was going through. The grief, the abject grief of anyone who is taking care of a parent or a family member, for that matter, or a loved one. What was really difficult is the forgetting. The first time I realized she didn't remember who I was just heartbreaking. And all these things, and all the grief and the suffering that comes from caregiving, the Vocalise helped me to contend with and put into context. I was determined through what I had read online in books to not give up the attempt at communication just because she was not able to communicate fully verbally, because she didn't stop vocalizing completely. The verbal ability diminished to mumbling, diminished to just sounds. It sounded to me like humming. And so I just started, I used that as a cue, and I just started to sing. Now, I was thoroughly amazed that while I'm singing, she would actually start to hum along. I thought, this is interesting and also very cool. But the minute I would stop, she would stop too, but at least I found a line in, and that was through the world of sound. Later on, as she could no longer even verbalize, I still sang, not knowing how much was reaching her. So I went to kiss her one evening, and I kissed her on her right cheek, and I actually just kept my lip there, and I started to hum. Lo and behold, she started to hum as well. And I thought, well, this is the same song hummed from across the room, no response. And I just pressed my lips gently to her right cheek, right at the cheekbone, and just hummed all those songs. And her body resonated them, and she felt the resonance, and she hummed back, note for note for note. Up until the time of her death, that was a daily practice. And so the world of sound was able to penetrate the deep veil that would want to isolate the patient from the rest of the world. It's worth the sacrifice, and while the while the inclination is to be selfless, take care of yourself. Get enough sleep, hydrate, keep a sense of humor. Knowledge is important. It's vitally important for Alzheimer's caregivers. But to be able to function well, to do the job well, to be effective for your loved one, know that this is new territory. You have no experience. None of us has experience in this, but you can do this. It just takes your loving heart and disposition to say, what if, ask questions, and then answer them for the sake of your loved one who can't ask or answer them. But yes, by all means, take care of yourself, which was something that I didn't do well because I wasn't cautioned to. Remember, as much as you love your loved one, love yourself too.